And if Des herself isn't the knight, then what's her role in the story? To gauge that, let's analyse what functions she already serves, outside of possibly being the knight. For starters, she's haunting the narrative. Although she's not around, we can still see references to her scattered around the game. The most apparent examples of Des appearing where she shouldn't are within the code itself. Unused dialogue, a muted guitar audio file, sprites of a black deer from the Mantle game. And within the game you can see symbols of her everywhere, whether it be images of baseballs, her name being spelled out, or the recurrence of the number 1225. You can feel her presence. Not only that, but we can see what impact she left on the people around her through the stories they tell about her. This is especially the case with Noelle. It's in reminiscing about Des while walking through Cyberworld that she bonds with Chris, the distance between them since the disappearance, bridged through their shared history. Something similar happens with Susie too. Even though she's never met Des, Noelle's story about watching horror movies with her older sister helped illustrate aspects of herself and her relationship with fear and her desire to break rules that let her connect with Susie. And I think both of these scenes can be related to Deltarune's themes of storytelling by showing just how important it can be. Des isn't around anymore, and as such, she now only exists in the memories of those that knew her, and the stories that are told about her. In talking about her with Chris and Susie, Noelle is effectively keeping part of who her sister was alive, and spreading that influence to even more people. And as a bit of an aside, the line about Des wanting to show Noelle a city of shining light would be very tragic if it was not Des herself that brought this about. It fits the idea that, even though she's lost and no longer in Noelle's life, her memory still has an effect on people. It feels more salient for Noelle to look at a place she's never seen before and think of this person that's no longer with her. Rather than for Des to get to live out their dreams, it feels too kind in a way that doesn't feel very in line with the game's tone. This could also fit into the themes of unhealthy nostalgia. Say Carol's the knight, which we'll expand on in the next section. It makes sense for her to recreate aspects of who Des was in such a way to get Noelle to think, look, remember Des? Don't you desperately want her back? To see her again? This could even be a subconscious desire. And for Knightmare, of course a being who's essentially the manifestation of memories of Des would create worlds reflecting that. And speaking of Carol, stories of a lost loved one can motivate you to do horrible things. Des' memory has driven Carol to become more controlling over her remaining daughter, more demanding, colder, and since she's either the knight or working with the knight, we can see the extreme lengths she's been pushed to, playing a hand in the end of the world. And looking to the rest of the group chat, to Asgore, the memory of Des drives him to find her at the cost of the rest of his life, the hope that Des could return, and it will fix everything. A cope holding him back from dealing with the state of his life, from acknowledging that Toriel doesn't want him back, from moving on, from him being a divorced bum with no future and an absolute stalking creep. And to Chris, Des' memory seems to be held over them in order to support the group chat, to not forget the promise they made, whatever it may be. This may be playing off some sort of feelings of guilt or obligation, and these feelings drive them to work against their friends. It quite literally held Chris back from leaving home to go after Susie. Not only that, but Chris seems to have been scarred by whatever happened when Des disappeared. They're scared of the bunker, told everyone to avoid it, attended therapy to deal with it, and repressed their memories of what they saw that day. And even outside of her disappearance, Chris' head begins to hurt from just looking through Des' belongings. But that's not to say her memories are flat negative to them. As mentioned before, Noelle's reminiscing of Des helped Chris to reconnect with her. In Chapter 4, right as Susie and Rousey run off towards the final tragedy panel, someone who's implied to be Des pushes against Chris' hand, preventing them from going back. In other words, Des was pushing them to move forward, and to face that uncomfortable reality. The scene is incredibly out of character for Des as the knight. The hand pushing Chris back shows no malicious intent, and Chris shows no discomfort from it. The text is written warmly. While Chris is working with the knight, their alliance is clearly begrudging. See their reaction to the caller, how they let themselves be attacked by the knight time and time again, how they kneel before them when their friends are defeated. If a scene was intended to be read as the knight, it would not be written so tenderly. It's only seen as Death Note evidence due to people already deciding that's her role. The songs Don't Forget and Raise Up Your Bats also seem to be about the way Des comforts Chris. Assuming the former is Des singing, which seems likely, the song establishes her as someone who'll be with you in the dark. As established before, dark here could be representative of fear, trauma, or just difficult situations in general. Don't Forget then ties into how, even though Des is no longer around, you have to remember who she was, to keep those memories close, to let the memory of her bravery, her willingness to break rules, to not let anyone tell her what she can do inspire you to do the same. She may be gone, but you can still use her as an example of how you two can keep moving forward in spite of overwhelming darkness. Raise Up Your Bat seems to be a more direct pre-telling of the end of the game. This is going to get very speculative. These lines talk about how Chris will follow her into the dark, to find her in the depths, that even in this darkness, Chris is there to guide her out, and that Des will be there with them. It shows how close the two are and how they support each other. And these lines seem to be about the roaring itself, with lines describing the night crying, Chris possibly losing their hand, and the hope of a new ending slowly dying. And even though Des isn't there in Chapter 3, a song she presumably wrote is, encouraging Chris to raise up their bat, or sword, face their fears, and to fight back against the dark. And I believe that ties into what the resolution of Chris' story will be about. Chris avoids thinking about the past, and is struggling against a decided future, so the conclusion to their story could be about them learning to stand up, face the past and their trauma, as well as fight for the future they want to see, even if the world is against them. Raise Up Your Bats also aligns Des thematically with freedom. It encourages you to fight for a new future, even if all seems lost. Her connection to freedom can further be seen in how individualized her room is, standing in sharp contrast to the white, jolly Christmas theming of the rest of the house. She's got parallels to Susie, who herself is very freedom-coded, and it seems she broke rules from time to time, watching inappropriate shows and movies with baby Chris and Noelle. All of these paint Des as someone who does what she wants, even if it goes against the grain of those around her, or against what she's told to do. This also ideologically aligns her with Gaster, another character we've established to be fighting against fate. It also puts them in opposition to the Knight and the group chat, forces trying to recreate the past. This could also show the difference between who Des was, someone who would have advocated for change, and what Des is remembered as, a symbol of the past, and how things totally used to be better, but really they weren't. Speaking of Gaster, he shares quite a few similarities with Des. Both are heavily associated with darkness in the depths, both disappeared without a trace while looking into the dark, and are only in the game in weird creepypasta-esque scenarios. Both also exist outside of the world of the game. Gaster obviously is directly spoken to us as real players and referred to Deltarune numerous times. While Des has never directly broken the fourth wall, we still have to go outside of the world of the game to see her, to hear her call out into the void, even if she isn't intentionally talking to us. By having pieces of her within the code, an ARG element is created, just like the characters we also desperately want to find Des. Searching through every nook and cranny we can, looking into the darkest corners of the game, into the code, into unused assets, into the space between fiction and reality, to the point we've convinced ourselves this fucked up demon thing is Des. It helps put us into the same mindset as the group chat. We too really want to meet Des. The 1225 room is also game breaky. There's no collision, you can walk off the path and over empty space. It's sort of like a debug testing room, or a room where the collision just broke, alluding to Des clipping out of reality, into the depths. The entire sequence can honestly be read as Chris following in Des' footsteps, and getting a glimpse of just how lost Des is, and how broken her plane of reality is. No matter where she goes, there's no end in sight. The paths endlessly change as she traverses them, as she wanders and wanders about, aimlessly. Chris losing the hand at the end could be likened to something Des is going through. Hands represent control, so it could be a losing control of her life, of her grip on reality, or of her sense of self. Other characters who've seen into the dark also have a loose grip on reality, and we know Des can't tell how long she's been there, can't tell if it's been days or years, can't tell the difference between being asleep or awake. She can't hear herself or see anything. If she's in this position, she can't really affect the real world. Rather, to see what she could do, let's look to Gaster, or Man. Gaster can't affect the world directly, needing us to inhabit a vessel in order to do so. In Undertale he also couldn't do much, only his goners could, holding pieces of him, and even then they only barely exist. Man only appears in the cracks between reality, in rooms between rooms, places that should be impossible to access. He can't be seen, he's always just out of view behind a tree. It's only in Chapter 3 that he's able to speak. If Des is in a similar position to these two, it should stand to reason that she can only influence reality in similar ways to them, and that's likely what happens in Chapter 4. Chris tries to go back when faced with the final prophecy. Chris presses their hand against a doorway, against the space between rooms, and another hand presses up against theirs, just out of view, just perfectly out of view and pushes them back. It prevents them from avoiding their fate and rather pushes them onward to face the prophecy and seal the fountain. We can see that there's a muted audio clip of a guitar. As such, this is Des, pushing through the crevices of reality and the fiction itself to push Chris forward. It's a similar role that Man fulfills, helping Chris work through their trauma. And that is what I think Des' role will be about. Chris will find Des, and when they're at their lowest point, and they've betrayed their friends, and made their way into the darkest dark, Des will be there for them, to help them knock them dead into the night, because even when someone is gone, their memory of them can still help you get through difficult times. Even if they're not around anymore, their memories and the impact they've had on you will always be there to guide you. Now, let's talk about the final candidate for the Roaring Knight.